because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are. And we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Welcome to an unscheduled episode of Cows in the Field. My name is Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we are unscheduled talking about Sofia Coppola's 2020 film, On the Rocks.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, kiddo. Oh my gosh, do you look beautiful. Cliff, how's your mom's hip?
Good, thanks.
Good. He thinks you're my girlfriend.
Brace.
Been busy?
Yeah. Dean's traveling with clients all the time, and I'm just the buzzkill waiting to schedule things. I'm so stuck.
So Dean's going away a lot, huh? On business trips?
Dad,
Raise your hand if that sounds fishy.
he's not like you. He's a good guy, a great dad.
Sure, it's nature. Males are forced to fight, to dominate, and to impregnate all females.
I think we owe the listeners an explanation as to why we're doing this. All of a
Yes.
sudden, this was not planned.
You owe me an explanation. Why am I here?
Laura doesn't know
with this microphone?
Laura doesn't even know why I chose to do this. Why I begged her to come and record an episode on this, basically with no warning.
No.
Okay, so we watched On the Rocks last night, and my reaction to the movie, well, Laura at one point turned to me and was like, I'm really enjoying this. Like, I'm really having a fun time. And I was like, really? And, my reaction at the end of this movie was like,
This is definitely a Laura's choice.
yeah, my view was like, okay, minor Sofia Coppola. It's the kind of movie that, like, I don't know. I take it or leave it. I'm relatively bored with it. I didn't not like the Bill Murray character Felix, and I felt like there was almost no pushback from Rashida Jones, and I was like, I don't understand why we're seeing a movie like this in 2020. It feels so pre-Weinstein.
Mhm.
And okay, but so then this morning I wrote my review of the movie, and I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
And I basically felt like I had some kind of cute insights, but it didn't, and really for me didn't add up to anything. And we're going to get into why. And then I came downstairs and we talked about it, and you had some, I thought, really interesting insights that I just did not see. And so I was like, we need your insight out there.
That's all? That's the whole reason?
Well, it's also that I feel like that conversation for me solidified why I love recording this podcast with you, is that you were one of my favorite people to talk about movies with.
Aw.
And you brought such insight, and it made me see the movie in a completely different light and made me see depth where I only saw shallowness. I said to you, I was like, I think the world needs to hear you on this. So
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
I hope I do it justice after
the
that.
world, namely the two people that are going to listen to this
Sure.
episode. By the way, go now that you've heard all these nice things I've said about Laura. If at this point you have not seen On the Rocks, just probably turn off, because there will be spoilers. I don't really feel like this is a movie with like twists, although
No.
it's a movie where
There's a mystery, and the
It's a
mystery is
mystery.
answered,
The
and we're going to
yeah.
talk about it.
So, if you're intrigued by Sofia Coppola movies starring Bill Murray, Rashida Jones, and Marlon Wayans, go check it out. It's on Apple TV Plus. Otherwise, if you have seen it or you don't care, we're about to talk about it. This will be a short episode, so let me launch into it. So here, I'll just read you my review, because you have not.
Okay.
I want to just give you a feel.
No, you know
for
I don't leave your letterbox reviews anymore. I'm sorry,
how
honey.
I felt content with this review, but
Yeah.
I felt like, I found some sort of cute insights, but it wasn't deep. And once you shared your thought, I was like, oh crap, Laura
then you
actually has
deleted
a
yours?
deep.
No, I'm kidding.
No, then I edited it. I said, I'll tell you what I said. So, okay, so I said, here's what I said. I said, the origin of the idiom on the rocks comes from the literal description of a shipwreck. And like those poor ships who missed the telltale signs of land and ended up in shallower waters than they could handle, our heroine, Laura, is adrift dangerously close to the shore without a lighthouse. That is, until the sudden interest of her father in her husband's possible extramarital affairs reinvigorates her electric complex, spurring a perfunctory family adventure that culminates anemically and predictably in safe harbor. Paragraph 1. Paragraph 2. Here's another more lively read. Prometheus was chained to the rocks by Zeus, on the rocks by Zeus, for bringing the gods' fire to humans. Thought of this way, for a relationship to be on the rocks is for it to be suffering precisely because of what its members know about themselves and each other. Information perhaps gained illicitly or simply coming to know oneself and one's desire.
Interesting.
Unlike poor Prometheus, however, a failing relationship is salvageable, but there's no going back to the pre-fire state of ignorance. Some changes must be born mutually or not at all. And that's where I had left it. Then I talked to you and then I wrote edit. My wife had a much richer take on this movie like this to help me convince her to write it up. And this is now what we're doing. So with that build up, I
love that you focused on the rocks and like the origins of it, like both mythically or like idiomatically, just because I feel like that was like a real Felix Bill Murray move. You know what I mean? Bill Murray was always like spouting off these like, well, the birthdays are a pagan ritual and the Christians didn't.
True, yeah.
The Christians didn't celebrate them precisely for that reason, and we're past that now, is what he said, right?
Yeah.
He's always like giving like some little anecdote.
He's giving some speech.
A little speech, right?
Yeah.
That usually just justifies his bad behavior. Okay. I mean, I think I went on a bit of a journey with this movie too, in that like I was enjoying it. But I wasn't like, this movie is Sofia Coppola's masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. But I also had to like ruminate on it for a little bit before I came to like my understanding of it. Because so the central thing is like whether or not Rashida Jones is trying to understand whether or not Laura, thank you. Laura is trying to figure out whether or not her husband Dean is cheating on her. That's like the whole thing, right? And in the end, he's not cheating on her. That's a spoiler alert. But the entire movie, I was convinced he was.
Mm-hmm. And you were even convinced after the movie ended. When the credits roll, you're like, he's still doing something
I
shady.
was like, Yeah, I mean, she really closed it with like a bow. Like she was like, no, I'm not going to leave any openings here for whether or not he's cheating on her. I felt like Sofia Coppola was trying to like make it pretty clear he wasn't. But I was so convinced that he was so shady that like the way that he was playing it was just like so suspect. I was like, there has to be something wrong with this marriage. And when I was watching it, I was just like, no, he's definitely cheating on her. It might be not with this Fiona chick, but he's definitely cheating on her. And then I realized later, it's not that he's cheating on her, but I was feeling like there's something really wrong in the marriage. Mm-hmm. And I think that the whole question of whether or not Marlon Wayne's Dean is cheating on her or not is kind of a red herring. It's like the most obvious thing that can go wrong in a relationship when actually there's a lot more that's going wrong in that relationship, a lot more like subtle, mutual, two-sided stuff that's been going on for a long time that's quite universal. And like that's the real meat of the relationship that they're going to have to work on. And the conclusion of that movie, like them just sort of having a nice dinner and laughing about the time that she thought he was cheating on her, isn't really like safe harbor, as you said. Like they have so much more work to do. So I really like, I saw a lot of things that I recognized in that movie, and in Laura's struggle and trying to figure out how to be a wife and a mother and her own person with her own aspirations. And then also how to be a daughter and have a relationship with her dad too. Because I think Laura is really dominated by very self-involved people. I think if like, you know, the character of Dean hasn't really done anything wrong. He's committed no sins. It's just that he is really self-involved. And if he's cheating on her, it's just like an emotional cheating on her with his career now. He's gone all the time. And I think the part that really like put my hackles up with Dean was when she has to admit to him that she's been like following him around and she suspected him of cheating and, you know, finds out that she was wrong about that. And she says, well, you feel like you're gone all the time. You know, it feels like you're like everywhere but here with our family. And he says something like, oh, I'm trying to like be my best in my career to impress you. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be good enough for our girls. I'm doing
it for you and the family.
Right.
Yeah.
And that just felt like such bullshit. Such bullshit. And he does it with like a little quaver in his voice. And I thought that's why I thought he was still cheating, because I thought that was just like That's such a textbook
Yeah.
move to put the guilt like back on her, to be like, I'm like a wonderful person and you're a terrible person for thinking I would ever do this for you, like to you, like what's wrong with you? It's a textbook move in like a manipulative relationship, right? So I think that's what got my hackles up. But if he's not cheating on her, and I don't think he is, he's lying about the fact that he loves his career and he's having a really good time. And he's experiencing a freedom that Laura is not experiencing in that relationship. He is able to go to Mexico whenever he gets invited to a cool conference. He books that trip before he tells her about it. He just does what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Laura doesn't feel like she has that freedom.
Right. It's a movie about a relationship of two people who's now on the rocks. That relationship is now on the rocks. And we're led to believe that the reason the relationship is on the rocks is that Dean is cheating on Laura. But that's not the issue. The issue is that the relationship is on the rocks because the relationship that they have presumably mutually agreed upon is not working anymore.
Right.
The division of domestic and career labor is not actually divided in a way that both parties have agreed is equitable, fair, putting them in a position to flourish, and so on. And this is borne out again and again in the contrast we see between the life Dean is leading, and the life that Laura is leading. So Dean's life is glamorous and cool. He's at the club late and so on. And Laura's life is she picks the kids up, talks to Jenny Slate, who complains to her about the most recent guy she's been dating. And then she takes the kids to some ring around the circle kind of game where they're clapping and stuff. Then she cleans them up. She cooks food for them and so on. And it's just really boring. Her life is very boring. And when she has that moment to work during the kids' nap, she can't do it. She can't bring herself to work because she's not inspired. And, it's hard to schedule creativity, but also just that, she doesn't have any excitement elsewhere in her life. So what is she going to write about?
Right. And that's why she cooks up some excitement with her dad.
Well, right. And so then, her dad comes in and brings that. But what's so setting aside the Bill Murray character, like in a way, all the Bill Murray stuff is like, on this view is a kind of misdirect from what's really happening with their relationship. Of course, it's a different relationship that's on the rocks in its own respect. But the relationship between her and Dean is one that is suffering not because of infidelity, but it's suffering because of a miscommunication. So really, like they're not able to communicate with one another and about things that matter deeply to them. You mentioned earlier, like not in this conversation, but in an earlier conversation, you mentioned that the lack of communication is both ways. So it's, of course, at the one end, Laura can't communicate to Dean how dissatisfied she is with their current life and situation. But Dean can't communicate to Laura how happy and excited he is about his career, because there is this like feeling of like he can't be too excited, because if he is, that could be bad for her because her career isn't going as well right now.
Right.
Her writing isn't going as well.
Right.
And so they end up just talking about that and about her inability to start writing. And he doesn't know what to say. This is not his field. He doesn't have any advice. There probably isn't really any advice to be given. And so he just says these sort of platitudinous things, which is kind of just annoying and misguided.
And it makes her even more frustrated. But and I think it definitely is both ways. And I think he's also in a tough position. This movie is absolutely from her perspective. And I was like, definitely team Laura in this movie. But I think, the more I thought about it, the more nuanced I think his character, is maybe off screen as well. But like there's that scene where they come home from the party that they went to and he's like lit up. He's so excited and he's like babbling about ROI and like followers and like all this silly social media stuff. And he sounds like a bit of a tool, but he's really excited about what he's doing. And she can only kind of like muster like a half smile.
Right.
She didn't even, she goes to that party and I think he was excited to like have her come. And
he wants her to see his success.
He wants her to be proud of him. And she can't talk to any of them. Like, it's like, she's like completely emptied out. So, he doesn't know what to say to her for sure. That is a problem. And she's not articulating what she wants. She keeps saying like, oh, I don't care if you're not here for my birthday. But of course she cares.
Right.
She says, I don't want a birthday cake, but she looks visibly disappointed when the birthday cake passes her by.
Right. Because what she wants is not these individual discrete things. She just wants him to think about her and look at her. And that's a theme that kind of is
look
iterated.
At her as a woman and not just as the mother of his children too. But she doesn't want a Thermomix or whatever.
That's right.
She doesn't want an appliance.
That's right. But she wants him to see her for who she was when they fell in love, right? And also to sort of see her the way that he wants her to see him, namely as someone who has a budding career and is successful and celebrate the successes and has confidence and so on.
Yeah. And presumably she's been successful because she sold a book before she even wrote it. So, the publisher has a lot of confidence in her continuing on to be successful in her career. Yeah. But she's just feeling like in a rut right now. I know. I do like that this movie only shows 30 seconds of their wedding night, and then it just jumps ahead 6-7 years,
right?
Maybe more. And you don't really know who they were before all this, but you get little like Rashida Jones. She's so the Laura character is so kind of quiet and beaten down, and she just absorbs the other characters around her. But she wears these cool band T-shirts the entire time when she goes to sleep. Did you notice that? Yeah, she had cool fun band T-shirts.
I mean, they also live in Soho, and they're obviously
cool people. Yeah. But you don't see her talk about any of these cool things. Right. She just looks beaten down by scheduling and PTA meetings and all the rest of it.
Well, and then let's talk also, because another key for you was the Jenny Slate character, who's this constant refrain of someone coming in who kind of injects herself into Laura's life. And this is her only friend we see her interacting with.
Yeah. I think Laura's life is really lonely. That's the only other adult we see her with besides her dad and Dean, her husband, is this Jenny Slate character who's basically just another mom who drops off her kid at the same time and just monologues at Laura about her relationships. And she said something the first time we see her. She says, "We have to get coffee. I know you probably don't have time, but we have to get coffee because I'm seeing this new guy again." Laura serves as her therapist, basically. And Laura doesn't say a single word, whenever the Jenny Slate character is talking. But I think that's the common problem. That's what ties her relationship with her dad, with her relationship to Dean, is that she has lost herself in her relationships with other people. And she's completely given her own wants, desires, personalities, identities over to them because they're big characters. And I don't think anybody can really help that with Felix is the problem. But she's having to figure out that relationship that she's struggling with Felix is trying to figure out how much she can enjoy the good parts of a relationship with her dad and when she needs to put up those boundaries and just accept that he's, a very flawed person and that he feels present when he's present. He's really good at that, at making you feel like you're the only person in the room. But when he's gone, and what she needs from her husband is she wants him to think about her all the time, right? In a thoughtful way. And her dad's not going to fill that hole.
And also, I think, she wants her husband to take on more of the responsibility at home, so to open up space for her to pursue her creative ambitions and so on. But this is never fully expressed.
No, it's never expressed.
But it feels like it's one of the keys to the conflict.
For sure. Absolutely. Yes. This whole thing about her trying to write a book I have a toddler. I know how long they nap. You get 2 hours if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You can't write a book 2 hours max a day. That's nuts. It takes a while to warm up, Yeah. And she said something to her husband along the lines of I'm so used to writing at night. And he's just oh, you just got to make time. But it's, the reason she can't write at night is because he's out at night all the time for his work. And they must have I'm assuming they had some sort of agreement early on when they were having kids, right? And she has a career as a writer and he has a career in whatever he's
Marketing.
got a marketing, whatever he's got a career in. And she was the flexible one, right? Because she figures I can write wherever and I can write whenever and I can write in the breaks. And like, you know, you think you're going to have a lot more time than you do when you have kids.
Yeah.
But that must have been like what they decided, right? So she's going to be a career woman. He's going to be a career woman, but she's the flexible one. So they're not going to get a nanny. She's going to do all the pickups and drop offs and all the stuff and also try and be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not working out for her, but she's not really telling him that. But the subtle ways that she is telling him that, he's not really listening either.
Right.
Because he just says stuff like, I keep telling you, you got to make more time for yourself.
Right. I mean,
and just leaving it there because he doesn't offer to then help. How is she
Right.
going to make more time for herself?
yes.
How is that going to happen, Dean?
Yeah. I think that, so I think that's exactly right. And it makes what looks like what I described as an otherwise perfunctory relationship melodrama into a much more poignant distillation of, I think, the plight of the middle class worker. I mean, they're pretty high in the middle class, but still the plight of the middle class
Your life
worker
looks nice.
in today's economy, where you have two career-driven, aspirational people who still want to have kids, and they're trying to make it work. And it's not like he is some misogynistic asshole. He cares about her and is trying to do his part, but the lack of communication between them undermines their ability to find an equitable path forward, which will work out, I think, for Laura and for Dean.
Yeah.
And
I mean, these were people, you call them middle class. They're probably upper middle class.
Yeah, they're very rich.
They're very, very wealthy. So, when you're in a position like that, then you can outsource a lot of stuff. But all the same, like,
they have
time
family.
is a resource.
Yeah.
Your energy is a resource. Your ability to like connect with another human being is a finite amount of resource. Some people have more of it than others, but like, you're gonna burn out, and I think that's no matter how much you have and whether or not you are able to have a nanny or, a house cleaner or whatever like services you can like, outsource out. Like, it's still true that it's impossible to have it all. Like,
it's true that you're the primary caregiver for another or multiple other human beings. Even when you are outsourcing quite a bit of that, you still have that primary responsibility falls on your shoulders. And it's both that, but it's, as you were saying, it's also that their relationship has grown apart, partly because his career is taking off and her career is kind of stagnating.
Yes.
And that's driving them apart because there is, like it or not, admit it or not, there's a kind of jealousy from her looking towards him and kind of, I'm not sure what the word is for him.
Yeah, it's like she's displacing her jealousy towards like this, towards this Fiona woman or like the woman that she thinks he's having an affair with. But it's really not that. It's like his like joy at having a career.
Yeah, and it for him, he can't. There's a kind of frustration with being unable to share that joy with her, and so as a result, like they just become, they're on different trajectories almost. They're going in different directions, and that leads people apart, regardless of their kids involved or not. But the kids are just this added complication.
Yeah. I was thinking about the kids part though, in particular, when I was talking about like, your social, like your ability to connect with people as being a resource or a finite amount. Just that like, because Bill Murray talks about when he first started to cheat on his wife, Laura's mom, was when like they had kids and she started to like put a lot of her like love and focus, her light onto them. And, I think it is relatively impossible to give your whole 110% self to your kids and your whole 110% self to your partner, and then also have 110, for yourself.
Career,
and for your career / you is like, whatever, if it's not a career, like whatever else sort of,
your creative
fills up your cup.
ambitions, whatever.
Yeah. It's impossible. Like you're going to have to like people connect a little bit less as a couple, perhaps because, they've been with their kids all day and they're drained and they just don't have anything left at the end of the day. Like that's a real thing. And I think, they need some time together is what they need at the end of this movie.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that I thought was interesting is, so I at the end of the movie, I was basically, the other reason I thought was perfunctory is I'm like, well, yeah, he's not cheating on her. End of story.
Not
right?
end
like,
of story.
Yes. And no, but
so much more work to do.
Right. So
Yeah.
let me just finish this thought. So
Sorry.
I just end the movie last night and I'm like, okay, well, that movie was sort of boring and inconsequential. Like it was resolved. And like she shouldn't have thought he was cheating on her. That wasn't cool. Okay, what was your take about the end of the movie?
Well, that they have a lot more work to do. But like that like it's not resolved at all.
Yeah.
Like that, I think the Bill Murray stuff and this like fake cheating concern has been a catalyst. It's allowed Laura to perhaps, if not articulate out loud, articulate to herself some of the things that are making her unhappy, and realizing that it's not about this, this red herring of an affair, but it's actually about like what's happening with her and Dean. And Dean has started to notice too, if she's feeling this way, if she's displacing those thoughts and putting them onto a fake affair, like that she does need a little bit more attention from him. And so he like gets her a birthday cake at the restaurant. And I think they're like starting to patch things up, but they have like a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting though as well that so much of the conflict that we're talking about is not expressed, not communicated, not articulated, but it's there. It really is in the fabric of the movie. And that's what I think I was missing when I was watching the movie that you were helping to articulate for me and made this a richer viewing experience for me. Should we also talk about Bill Murray?
Yes, but I also want to talk. Yeah, I mean, I think Bill Murray's going to connect to this, but I just wanted to note the gendered stuff, which I think, I was also reading this as like something that is perhaps, relatively universal of a gendered issue in a marriage. There was or in any relationship, but I think particularly in marriages with children. There was this article going around a couple of years ago about like about cognitive labor, and it was just like it was about like that oftentimes women in relationships are the ones who remember like notice that we're out of toilet paper. They, or keep dates in their head, keeps the PTA schedule, keep the doctor's appointments in their head, run that stuff, like a lot of invisible work. I mean, literally just like keeping things in your mind. That's why it's like cognitive labor that men don't worry about and just like, and like let the women worry about. It's not like if you're writing stuff down, like I do these chores and you do those chores. We never remember the cognitive, just the weight, this headspace of remembering those things and holding on to them. And I think that's one of the things that Laura resents, is that like she says something along the lines of like, oh, he's out there like traveling and seeing the world, and I'm just this bummer when he gets home who wants to schedule stuff. And I think she feels like that he doesn't have, like he's not taking on as much of the responsibility of having kids as she is. And I think that's her frustration generally with men. And that one of the things that she's trying to work out with Felix is like, or with her father, she's just like, don't you feel any responsibility for the things that you do, for the family that you left, for the women that you have relationships with? Like, how can you just be so cavalier about this? Like, she's so weighed down by the cognitive labor, the cognitive load of all these like tiny little things in their lives that he's like, he doesn't worry about.
He does not worry about it.
He doesn't worry about it. And I think there's even a scene, this is not a tiny thing, but there's a scene where they're at dinner and they don't know what to talk about, which happens a lot. Every time they're together, they don't really know what to talk about. And she says, should we start our kid on preschool?
Right. Yeah.
And he just says, I trust you.
Yeah.
That's just like, he just shunted that right back onto her.
Yeah.
Like she was like, I'm not sure what to think about this. Can I talk to you about it? And he was like, oh no, like you got it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yep. No, that's right.
And by saying I trust you, it's like he's framing it like I'm empowering you to make this decision. But in fact, he's just like, no,
just
like you can you can pick that up all yourself. Yeah. Yeah, that's your job.
I don't care.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I do think like there has been research that says that like women do far more of the like mental and emotional load of child raising and just managing a family than men do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if like, if you break down the actual chores, it's very equitable in a relationship.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's like this invisible stuff that women do.
Yeah, that I think is a really good and important insight that again is it's subtly conveyed in the movie, but it's not something anyone ever articulates, which is so let me just articulate another reason why I didn't connect with the movie, but this will just set you up to set me straight. So I really disliked the Bill Murray character, and I disliked his place and role in the movie.
Uh-huh.
I first of all, I disliked him as a person because but I think we were supposed to think that way about him. I mean, he's such a blowhard. He's such a everything comes easy and natural to him. He just waltzes through life without any consequences to any of his actions. And when called out a little bit by Rashida Jones, he has not really much to say for himself, except just sort of platitudes and sort of selfishness. And I was just thinking, okay, it would have been nicer to have more of an explicit articulation of this guy, of a condemnation of this type of character, either through a kind of arc. So this character has an arc, and then at the end, he's sort of like comes to some realization that he's been a bad father or a bad person or something and has to make amends, which there's no arc to this character. Or there's some more explicit rejection of him by Rashida Jones, by Laura, but instead she ends they end the movie with a kind of knowing nod, and they're
He whistles, she whistles
they're
back.
on good terms again.
Yeah.
And I guess I just felt, so my very surface read was I disliked that. I was just not interested. I didn't want to see a movie about an entitled white guy who gets away with everything and nothing happens to him. Okay, but now set me straight, because I think you had a much deeper read on this.
Well, I mean, I think there are so many of those entitled white guys and there are no consequences for them. That is a real thing, and I think it's actually really genuine that he just continues on, and I don't think he will ever change. That character feels real to me, and I don't think he will ever change. But it's really like about Laura's story, about her relationship to him, and figuring out that he's not going to change, that she can't change him, and there's no point trying. And all she can do is just try and figure out where she puts up her boundaries and how much of herself to give over to him, how much of her like personal life to let him in on, because he does take it over and twists it and turns it into something about him. And she can enjoy his sort of fun company when he's around, but she has to sort of figure out like how to be her own person and to stand her own ground when he starts to encroach. Because that's all you can do with people like that if you want to have a relationship with them.
Right.
It sounds like, I mean, there was a very brief scene with her family members where it's clear that like they chose not to have a relationship with him, and she does.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
I have a theory that like she was like the favorite daughter, because there's like maybe a second daughter, I think. It's the family stuff isn't really fleshed out or like written out explicitly, but I think they do have a special relationship in their own way. The gift that he gives her, the watch, is really thoughtful. He talks about her as a 9-month-old and seeing her as a person. They do have a connection. It's just that he's like a deeply flawed character who can only connect so far.
Yeah. That was one thing that I think I noted, which was it's almost like his relationship to her is as deep as the relationship he has with that police officer who pulls him over. Like, he's able to quickly and smoothly win people over, but just as soon as that, he's out of their lives, and then you just kind of think back and you're like, nothing was really exchanged. We had no real deep connection. It was just like, oh, this person, that person, shake hands, everyone smiles, I feel good about myself, and then he's gone, and it's like he's like the equivalent of like eating a Starburst or something. Like, it's like very sugary and sweet, but then you feel sick afterwards when he's gone. Like, you just feel like there wasn't anything. It didn't that relationship or experience didn't nurture your soul in any way.
No, for sure not. No, but it feels like it at the time, because he's giving her roses when her husband isn't, and just making her feel special when she's feeling lonely. And it feels like it's something meaningful, but it's all nonsense. And he's just gonna wander off on the QE too.
Yeah.
But I think like, she's got those two relationships that she's dissatisfied with for different reasons and working through. Her relationship with Dean is a real relationship.
Yeah.
It's a marriage. It's something that they're going to work on. It's something that they're going to talk to one another about, and he's going to give and she's going to take, and she's going to give and he's going to take, or whatever. And that's just not what's going to happen with Felix. Yeah. And that's like her journey, is realizing like that she is like entered into like a working relationship with her husband. You know, it's romantic love, but it's also, you know, it's like an agreement to keep doing this together, to keep working on it, to get slogging through the tougher times. And with your family members, it's like either you accept them maybe for who they are and that's it, and you just figure out where your boundaries are, or you let them go.
Yep.
When they're people like Felix. I'm not saying that for all family members.
And she's chosen to have him in her life. And that's what I think. So what I read with that final little exchange with them is like, what are you doing? Like, get this guy out of your life. He's he's clearly a loser. He screwed you over basically, big time, you know? And what I think the read you're giving is basically, no, like, she knows all that, and she's choosing to have it in her life anyway, and she's okay with that. She has her boundaries. She knows where they are. She'll enforce them, and that relationship has evolved. Where at the beginning she has less boundaries with him, and now she has more strong and solid boundaries. She knows where they are, and she's prepared to sort of enforce those boundaries, and she does so by basically saying, "I'm not going on the QE2 with you."
Right, because I have responsibilities, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're close clearly because she felt the need to call him when she was confused about what was going on with Dean. I don't think she's ever going to make that mistake again.
Yeah.
She's going to talk to Dean.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I was remembering too, is that like whenever she has an impulse to talk to Dean, her dad tells her not to do it.
That's right. That's interesting.
He's thwarting their ability to like work through their own marital problems by like spinning this crazy yarn and hiring people to like look at his credit card.
And Dean even says like, you should have just
talked to me. And she said, I know I shouldn't have. It should have. Right. So he's really exacerbating things. But I mean, he's brought something to light. I suppose they got to the bottom of it. That's what Felix says. We got to the bottom of it.
We got to the bottom of it. Okay, so this isn't really like quite the style of this podcast, but I think it's worth noting that there are biographical elements embedded in this movie.
Yes, yeah. Sofia Coppola is a woman who is under the shadow, perhaps, or working under.
In the shadow of her father.
Thank you.
Francis Ford
Coppola.
She's married to Spike Jonze, another filmmaker.
No, she's not currently married to Spike Jonze. She's married to the guy from Phoenix.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. She was married to Spike Jonze.
Did she have kids with Spike Jonze? Or
I'm
kids with
not
the guy from Phoenix?
Sure.
Okay,
but
whatever.
But either way, she's been in relationships with two creatives,
and she has two kids.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Rashida Jones is married to the guy from Vampire Weekend and has a kid with him as well. So they're both women who are career women, creative women, who have relationships with men who are also creatives that have to be on the road a lot. So I can only imagine like what their respective relationships are like in terms of trying to like carve out that space where, whose project, who's like, focus needs the priority right now, who's going to be on the road, who's going to be here, who's on set, who's traveling, my project, your project, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it does feel, so it feels like this is a movie born of a very personal experience for both of these women.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously there and informs, I'm sure, some of the dynamics that's in the movie. And so anyway.
Yeah, but I think that seems, I was thinking about Lost in Translation a little bit. Just like Scarlett Johansson's character, that's obviously like they're brandly newlywed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't had as much as a foundation, but her husband is a director, perhaps, right?
He's a music video director. And he's gone all the time. And he's, like in his moment, he's having a moment of success. He's doing his work in Tokyo, and she feels completely abandoned by that and out in the cold. She doesn't have her own aspirations and projects in that moment. But I imagine that often feels that way too. If you're having to share your partner with your children and also their career. And when somebody is like in a creative moment, I think it's probably all consuming. Yeah.
Certainly when you get in a philosophy hole, it's pretty all consuming.
That's what this is.
But like when you're in a philosophy hole, you're still physically here with me. It's even more intense when they're like on the road,
Yeah. So I thought that we had to get this out there quickly because Laura had a lot of good insights, and
I hope I articulated them as well as you felt I did this morning.
Yeah, she saw through the movie for I think what it is, and all I saw was like a bunch of silly, like, I tried to read into it like the birth of the idiom of on the rocks, which because I couldn't think. I was just like, this movie is nothing interesting. So I was just like, I'll find something interesting in this, in the vicinity here to talk about. It is
hard. I mean, she's doing a lot of stuff not in the
subtle.
text
Yeah,
and in
it's
between the
very subtle.
lines. And I agree with you that the quick reading of this movie was actually, said out loud, and the plot of the movie is really superficial.
Yeah.
And that's why I was focusing on like this, whether or not Dean was cheating or not. And like my obsession with I was like, no. Like this movie can't end with him not cheating. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that something is wrong.
Yeah, and that's what you articulated, is it's not about the cheating. There's nonetheless still something wrong.
Yeah. But when I was watching it, I wasn't yet. I was registering everything that I just talked about, but I wasn't quite ready. I wasn't like yet bubbled up to the top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, well, what about the way that he acted when she touched his phone?
Right.
And like none of that stuff actually matters. It's all red herring. It's a tricky movie in that way.
Yeah.
If I'm right about what this movie's actually
No, I think
about.
you're 100% right, and I think I'm 10% right. in that
I'm not sure how many people are going to connect with it though, if it's if it's
deeply
operating
personal.
on another level.
No, but I think it's deeply personal, and it's articulating something that I think people who've gone through this experience will feel in their bones, and you've helpfully articulated it. That's why we do this podcast, is to articulate the
to help
feelings.
people with their marital problems.
Yes, to articulate our feelings about movies in a way that can be intersubjectively interesting and enlightening, right? We're not looking to find the one true interpretation. We don't care. I don't personally care too much about the intention of the author. I'm looking for find some kernel of insight that we can then articulate in a way that can be appreciated broadly, even if it's disagreed with. And I think that you succeeded,
on the terms that you just laid out.
You succeeded so wildly. And I failed so wildly in my thinking about this movie. And that's why I wanted to do this bonus episode. So thank you, Laura, for agreeing to do it. It meant a lot to me. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Felix, you're back in town.
Been busy?
Yeah, got a lot going on.
Do you? He should be worshiping the ground you walk on. And if he's doing something dishonorable, you need to know.
What if Dean's just busy? I'm in a rut. That's it.
I think we should follow him.
What?
I think you better see him in action.
This is your idea of incognito?
Coming through.
Here's the plaza. This is the place to have an affair. It has the most exits.
Exits on 3 streets.
Can you just act a little less excited about this? Because this is my life, and it might be falling apart.
I don't know why women get plastic surgery.
Because of men like you.
I prefer the factory original.
Yeah, and every other make and model.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Are there two? Oh, scared me.